Ray. What do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
5 stories that prove telekinesis is an untapped ability. The topic of telekinesis has long been discussed among the scientists of the world. Can the mind actually cause inanimate objects to bend or move without means of physical force? In the 1980s, a group of Chinese children were reported to have special abilities. The Chinese government stepped in and allowed scientists from all over the world to start conducting experiments. In these experiments, the children are said to have moved small objects, watches, horseflies, photosensitive paper, and more a distance of several meters without ever having touched the objects. The experiments were done under both blind and double-blind conditions, with researchers from different sectors of the Department of Defense. What shocked the scientists most is that the experimental results were all repeatable. The conditions for fraud and sleight of hand were totally eliminated, and multiple outside witnesses, including technical and military intelligence experts, were present at all times. In 1981, a paper was published by journalist Ziran Zazi for Natural Journal entitled "Some Experiments on the Transfer of Objects Performed by Unusual Abilities of the Human Body." After reading the reports, Eric Davis, Ph.D., FBIS, said, "Some researchers state that it is necessary to invoke a new physics, which somehow unifies the human consciousness, i.e. physics of consciousness, with quantum and space-time physics in order to understand psychic teleportation and related PK phenomena. So the question is, can we all develop the ability to perform telekinesis? Here are 5 true stories that proves that we can. 1. Spoon bending in a restaurant. I have never thought of myself as being telekinetic. I am 13 years old, and I believe that I have some sort of special ability. One night I was watching a show about physics and telekinetics, and this one guy bent spoons with his mind. So I thought maybe it was worth a try. Well, my family and I, went to this restaurant in our neighborhood. I picked up a spoon and just stared at it and concentrated. All of a sudden, it just started to bend. I'm serious. I was so freaked out that I dropped the spoon. I didn't think about it the rest of the night, but this began to happen more often, even when I wouldn't look at the spoon. It is actually kind of cool, but my parents are real skeptics, and they make jokes like, "We're not going out to eat unless you promise not to bend any spoons." Really funny. 2. A few years back, during a time period that I was listening to a lot of various self-hypnosis tapes and meditating a lot, I had several cases of psychokinesis, each about a month apart. The first case, I was working on my computer and reached for my can of soda. To my astonishment, as I reached for the can, it spun away from my hand several inches until it hit the side of my keyboard, then continued to roll down the side of the keyboard. I instinctively grabbed the can with my other hand to prevent it from falling off the table. About a month later, I was at a restaurant eating with 3 other friends. As I went to grab for the ashtray, it again spun in the same manner as the can did and moved away from my hand, this time moving almost a foot across the table. As I looked up, 2 of my friends were staring at the ashtray with their eyes bulging in astonishment. I shouted out, "Did you see that?" Indeed, they did. So I was happy to actually have 2 eyewitnesses this time. About a month after that, I went into my kitchen at night, but the light burned out, so I started fumbling around in the dark, trying to find the small fluorescent light above the sink. I ended up placing my hand on the light, and as I did, it flashed with an incredible intensity. It scared the hell out of me, and I jumped back, noticing that it only lit up where my hand was. I felt no static charge or anything like that. I've never had another case since then, but I sure would like to know how to tap these abilities at will. 3. The ability to control the wind. I'm 14, and I have the ability to move the wind in any direction and in any force I choose to think about. I first discovered this ability when I was working outside and my dog was being a pest around me. With the force in my hand, I unexpectedly blew him over with a gust of wind. I further explored this occurrence by willing the wind to move in the direction of my choice. I was a perfect 20 for 20. I still haven't told my parents or anyone of my power for the fear of investigation or any other problems. So on a hot day, I'm always sure to be the cool one outside. 4. Taught to see the future and bend spoons. My friend, who I haven't spoken to in many years now, taught me to see the future by simply not trying too hard. She told me I couldn't see because I was trying too hard to see. She told me to just relax and let it come in. After this, I totally freaked out and predicted earthquakes and many other future events. I even warned of an earthquake, and no one listened. So I asked her, "Do you think the same attitude would work for telekinesis?" She said yes. That afternoon, I went in the room and decided to make a doll move. It was a 9-inch Michael Jackson doll. I gazed at it and thought toward it to move. After a couple of minutes of simply saying it through my mind, hardly trying to make it move, it jerked and almost toppled over. Now here's how to do it. Don't stare and don't force it to move. Simply think the words move, 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 and think only the object and nothing else. Breathe slowly through the nose and so on. Before the object moves, while relaxing, you will feel a tingling in the third eye. This means the object will move any second. Following this, the energies that are hitting the object cannot take any more energies, and it's moving back at you and will soon move away from you. As soon as you see it jerk, move your eyes as fast as you can. It's the only way to fly the object or move it to a distant area away from the original spot. If not, it will just jerk. Good luck. 5. Young daughter bends spoon. In the fall of 1999, I went to see Uri Geller give a talk at a Learning Annex class in San Francisco. I was delighted when Uri demonstrated how he bends spoons with one of the spoons I had hopefully brought along with me. My spoon was a solid one, stamped with the words Oneida Craft Stainless on the back side of the handle. There was nothing unusual or weak about this spoon, and although I didn't attempt to bend it forcibly, it seemed quite sturdy to me. Uri held up my spoon in front of him as he stood facing the audience of some 100 people in the room, holding my spoon in one hand by the cup part as he gently stroked the upper side of the handle with his free hand. He asked all of us in the audience to shout, "Bend!" at the spoon, and to visualize the spoon bending. We did this, and within seconds, we could see the spoon's handle beginning to move upwards towards Yuri's still gently moving hand. Uri also sprouted some seeds in the palm of his hand, which grew at an astonishing rate with little green tendrils popping out of the seeds within moments of the audience shouting, "Grow!" These sights were so inspirational that I decided to organize a small spoon-bending party at my home to see if we could bend a few spoons. At our spoon-bending party, most of us felt pretty self-conscious and took the spoon-bending very seriously. Instead of laughing and talking noisily and cheerfully as recommended, we didn't shout at our spoons and forks to intimidate them or to loosen ourselves up. Yet, while we took turns focusing on one person's spoon or fork bending attempt at a time, we suddenly noticed that my daughter was quietly sitting with a fork on top of her right wrist as she gazed off in the distance, and her fork was drooping down as if it was made of soft rubber. It seemed to melt down to mold itself to the shape of her wrist as we watched in amazement. She wasn't even paying any attention to her fork and didn't believe us at first when we exclaimed, "Your fork is bending!" We're planning to have another spoon-bending party, and this time, we'll make sure we make a lot more noise and laugh and shout a lot more. It's been said that spoon-bending requires relaxed inattention, in the sense that it's better to not get too preoccupied with worrying about whether your spoon is bending. People who are most successful at this say that it works when they're not even paying any attention. That's when your spoon is most likely to bend. You have to first try to get it to bend, and then change the focus of your attention to something completely different while continuing to touch or stroke it. If you think about quantum behavior on a macro scale, this business of relaxed inattention starts to make some sense. It's a lot like knowing that if you look for a quantum particle, you'll see one, and if you aren't looking, those particles behave like waves. These are 5 true stories that prove telekinesis is a natural, untapped ability. If you have had similar experiences, please send us an email at youarecreators2@gmail.com or leave a comment below.